IVM.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 79 of Shunya One. We have a fun episode coming up. We have Armando Osuna of CleverTap. He's a VP over there who has a really interesting work history. He's worked in a bunch of different places across marketing and brands and all that kind of stuff. And it's actually really interesting what kind of a career path he's taken. In the meantime, also please check out the Slack channel. We had an interesting question last year. We asked a very simple question. Are you an iPhone user or an Android user? Turns out 2 out of 3 of our listeners are Android users. That is, I guess, not so much of a surprise, but somewhat of a surprise. But, yeah, with that, let's get on with the show.
All right, welcome to Shunya One, episode 79 with Armando Osuna. How are you doing, Armando?
I'm doing great. I'm doing fantastic.
How have you been loving your India trip so far?
You know, this is the first time in Mumbai. And I think the thing that strikes me the most is the balance of the history and like what's going on today in this modernization of the world, and just seeing how everyone is just on their device doing a lot of things besides just sending chats has been something that's been pretty eye-opening. Because you hear about the market, you hear about it being a sleeping giant, but to actually experience it is something that's kind of surreal.
And how have you been liking Indian food in India?
Well, I would definitely say it blows anything that I've had in San Francisco out of the water.
Okay.
But I'm not going to lie. I think this is my 4th day in a row eating Indian food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I may be ready for a burrito when I get back to San Francisco, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I think your body is trying to tell you, like, in moderation.
Yeah, exactly. My internal spice levels are at an all-time high.
I do the same thing when I go over there with Mexican food. I eat that morning.
Oh my God, it's amazing over there.
But thanks so much for being here. You've obviously had a massive past of set of experiences in the mobile space. You've been doing a lot of cool stuff. You're obviously on board with CleverTap now to do a lot more cooler stuff, I'm hoping. But if you could just tell everyone about what you've been doing, what you've, all the gigs you've had, and of course, some background.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, CleverTap, I didn't really, think I'd be working at a place full time. I had been advising for such a long time. And, through my investment company, Meadow Ventures, just been looking and trying to find deal flow. And what ended up happening, I was in Berlin, met the founders of CleverTap. And, like all good relationships, they started off with the beer. Mm-hmm. And they really broke down the metrics, and I was really impressed. And ultimately, I think what I see in CleverTap is a potential unicorn coming out of India, and I wanted to be a part of that. But, we could get into the CleverTap stuff later. But, honestly, I started my career on Madison Avenue on the agency side.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because, 2005, there's no iPhone. My dad wants me to be an accountant. I'm a lazy student at USC. I'm trying to, really enjoy my surroundings, a.k.a.
California.
Yeah, exactly. And, I told him, I was like, hey, I'm going to be a marketing major. Almost lost his mind. He wanted me to be an accounting major. I was like, I don't think I'm an accountant at all. But, that's it. That's kind of where I got introduced to, digital media, right? And started off as a media buyer. And ultimately 2010, 2011, I find myself looking at my palm more and more because there is an iPhone there. Right. And I just realized that everything is going to trend towards that. So just kind of made the decision to get out to San Francisco, join a company called Keep in the early stages. And it was one of the very...
Note-taking company.
No, so it's KIIP.
Oh, okay.
So, but we do know that. So KIIP, so basically what it was a rewards SDK. And what we were doing is that we were doing gamification. And so the way that it worked was, you pass level 3 in Angry Birds, and rather than seeing an advertisement, you would see a real reward. Like, hey, here's $10 to Best Buy.
Okay.
And so that was the premise, is that in that moment, in that time when, wow, I feel so good about passing level 10, we put a brand in there. Right. Those same feelings are hopefully going to be transposed to that brand.
Right.
So that company, I was working with a very young founder, 18-year-old Brian Wong. Okay. Brian, Forbes list, 30 under 30, 4 years in a row.
Wow.
Very impressive kid, had graduated college by the time he was 18. And, I was on the early team, and we wanted to build something special. And we did. I think a lot of talent has come out of that company. They're still alive and kicking, and they're doing very well. But, that was kind of like the foray into startups.
Nice. And what you do after that? How do you get into, like, of course, now you have your own VC firm, you do investing yourself, and of course, you've also worked with a bunch of other advertising / digital media sort of companies which have been formative in this whole space.
Yeah, I think, it's almost hard to not want to help people, in Silicon Valley. And I always come from the mindset of being a helping hand, because the one thing that I've realized is that even if the company, it can't really help you personally, but someone that they can help them, you kind of do that pay it forward.
Yeah.
And to me, that's something that is alive and well there. And I think I love that attitude. It's not about being selfish and like, this is my idea. People want to tell you about like their ideas. And I think, naturally going into investing, you hear a lot of ideas every day. So, you're kind of inclined to want to see if you can kind of place the right kind of bet. But, beyond that, it's mobile, and I think that it's at a place right now where we kind of know where it's headed, but it's still early stages. So, you'd kind of be a fool not to kind of place these types of bets, right?
Right.
But, I think even from, my experience in analytics and attribution, working at companies like AppsFlyer and Adjust, what I saw really was this trend is like, Keep was at its heart an ad network.
Correct.
Right. And so when we're working with brands, they would say, well, I believe your numbers, but there's this third party that I'm using that actually verifies and validates, and that's what we're going to bill off of. And I was like, interesting. And that was the attribution players. And,
right.
When you kind of, when someone's not believing what you're saying or trying to say, well, let me just verify it. It's a bit offensive at first, but then you get it because there's so much money changing hands.
Right, yeah.
Right. And that's kind of what got me really interested into attribution. And, from there, you just kind of saw that, analytics was becoming more and more part of the daily life of the marketer.
Right.
Right.
And so, you want to kind of be where the money's at, and that's where the money was at that moment in time. So, I think at the end of the day, those companies are doing very, very well still.
Yeah.
I think AppsFlyer is on its way to becoming a unicorn. They're based out of Herzliya in Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
And, Adjust is based out of Berlin. So, one startup nation, and obviously what's going on in the Berlin startup scene. It's incredible. Yeah. And, kind of I found myself having these executive roles there. And then it's not that you grow tired of it, but then sometimes you need a little bit of a break. Mm-hmm. Right? And then when you need that break, that's kind of when you say, I want to start advising different types of companies to kind of break up the monotony of kind of doing that day to day.
Absolutely. In fact, with your background in first advertising, like buying ads, like you said, going into a digital ad network, going into then attribution of that ad network, it's actually been an interesting, it's like you almost planned it. But seeing as it is, what's your take on how digital ads or digital media in general gets, called up on for stats and accuracy and, everyone's really anal about, the numbers, like you said, because of so much money changing hands, whereas traditional media still has no idea what works.
Yeah, that's so true. And, it's almost like because mobile is so trackable, right? It's an SDK and it's on the device and when there's an app launch and what the user is doing. It's almost set up that way. It's set up so that it can be tracked and it can be verified. And if you really think about it, the number one thing on a marketer's mind these days who spend a lot of money on mobile is fraud.
Yeah.
Because where there's money, there will be fraud. And so the role that, I see kind of happening, and I guess my career is kind of funny because, I started buying media, then I went to an ad network, then I went to a company that tracked the ads, and now I'm at a company that helps you, recoup your investment, right?
Exactly.
So it's kind of like I'm following this like funnel, right? Naturally. Yeah. But it's because, that's kind of where you want to be. You want to be where, the apex of the next great and biggest thing. And, CleverTap sits there. CleverTap sits at a place where, they focus on segmentation and reactivating churned users, right? And, when you get to to that point, and you're working with these marketers, and you're seeing how much money is changing hands, it's almost like we need to exist, because if CleverTap it doesn't exist, they're kind of lost, right? It's just like it's like a leaky bucket. They're just throwing money away.
Exactly. It goes back to being like traditional media. Like I put up a hoarding or I put a ad in the newspaper, but...
The 50% rule, right?
Yeah.
50% of all advertising works, just nobody knows which 50%.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, so it's interesting to sort of see the whole digital media space sort of come around like this, right? And of course, because it's trackable, it'll only get harder and harder for, the people to justify the amount of money spent. But there's another angle which I wanted to ask you about. While you made the move from traditional media, and of course you've been in digital and mobile for so long, do you really see worldwide the amount of money being spent on traditional media really going down? Because somehow it just seems like that's still happening.
Yeah, I think.
And if you've noticed any newspapers in India while you were here, you'll see there's a lot of ads in newspapers.
Oh, absolutely. I just saw a YouTube ad for a movie called Zero, I believe, on the newspaper, which you're thinking, like, that should be a banner ad. But, it's an actual ad. I think there's always going to be a place for that. I think humans are multisensory.
There you go. Exactly. I agree with that completely. I think that's something that a lot of people talk about, which makes no sense, right? It's like not one thing necessarily has to replace another. Mm-hmm. You get new stuff happening and they can be complementary to previous kinds of things, right? And that is something that I feel that you see that it's one thing. I have these conversations all the time. Oh, podcasting. Oh, you're the next big thing after video. You're the next big thing after blogs. I'm like, no, it's like these things exist parallelly. They don't have to be, one doesn't necessarily have to replace the other.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, there's no better experience than watching a live sports match with your friends sitting on the couch. You guys are not just going to be staring at your phone. Mm-hmm. There's a different type of enjoyment. I think mobile is so personal, which is why it's growing, because it's every experience that you have is simply catered to you to get you to complete some type of action. While, television, it's your time to kind of space out and just kind of relax a little bit. So, as humans, you can't always be so tuned in. Mm-hmm. You need those moments where you can just kind of tune out and essentially just, sit in life, right? Just kind of enjoy the moment.
Nice. All right. But going back a little bit more to all the stuff you've done in Silicon Valley. How long has it been for you now in San Francisco?
Man, it feels like dog years. I feel like I've been there for 50 years, but no, I've been in Silicon Valley this will be my 8th year.
Yeah.
And I think a lot has changed. I think I've definitely become a bit more lazier in terms of, my food and who picks me up. And it's like there's an app for simply everything. And, in San Francisco is ground zero for this stuff. Cruise, which is a company that was acquired by General Motors, they're about to launch their driverless on-demand ride service. So there's not going to be one person in the car. It's going to be an empty car that picks you up and then you go. So I see these cars in my neighborhood every single day. They have all these, gadgets on the outside of the cart that essentially are helping it learn.
Right.
And then they're ready to launch. And, Waymo, another company that had that Uber lawsuit with Andy Landowski, they're about to launch their service in Phoenix. So, we're right there. We're right at this moment where things are going to be a little bit different. They're going to feel a little bit uncomfortable, but that uncomfortability is really just prepping you for the future.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, so in the last 8 years, you've actually seen from an iPhone, post-iPhone era, how things have just like gone ballistic in terms of every other technology that you've seen.
Yeah, I mean, and there's funny stunts like, last year, Amazon was dropping burritos from the sky via drone. And they did this special thing with Chipotle, and you're just like looking in the air and you're like, what is that? Oh, it's my food. It's in the air, but that stuff is coming. They got to kind of prep you. And I think that's the one thing about San Francisco. And in a lot of ways, I tell my friends and they laugh, but it sometimes feels like Blade Runner. Because there's just like immense technology. And I don't know if you guys have been privy to see the new Salesforce building in San Francisco, but at the very top of the building, and it's the tallest building on the West Coast. Yeah. Shout out to Mark Benioff, a USC graduate like myself. So that's one of the guys that I really look up to. But, it has one of the largest video screens at the very top of the tower. And on Halloween, they literally were showing Mordor
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that.
And it was like surreal because I'm just like, that's kind of creepy, you know? So it was just like, you see like, you know, the Eye of Sauron and it's like this fire at the tip of the building and it's just like throwing you off. And yeah, they did it for Halloween, but, you know, I told my wife, I was like, this is kind of scary a little bit. But, you know, it's they're willing to take those chances. They want the shock and awe because with the shock and awe is how they know they can have those paradigm shifts.
Yeah. In fact, we'll come back, take a quick break, come back and talk some more about some more new, interesting, cool stuff that you've been looking at.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please make sure that you are. We are IVM Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I have a little bit of news for people. We are releasing a new version of our app, and as part of that, we're running a beta program. We have about 40 slots left for different users to participate in the beta program, and if you'd be interested in doing that, please go to our website, ivmpodcast.com/appbeta. That's ivmpodcast.com/appbeta. Over there, you'll find a form which will let you submit your email address to us and we'll invite you into the beta. Again, it's a limited availability, so we're only going to be able to invite so many people, but if you're interested, please do subscribe. And this week on Cyrus Says, Cyrus talks to stand-up comedian Saurabh Mehta about moving from HR to comedy and positioning himself as the first giant stand-up comic. On Simplified this week, the guys talked to Atul Churamani of Magnasound about the golden age of indie pop in the 90s. On the season finale of the Kinetic Living podcast, Coach Urmi spoke to fellow NTC trainer Kunal Rajput, and they talk about kettlebell sports, powerlifting, and how his dad, a Mumbai-based bodybuilder, inspired him to pursue his fitness career. And starting November 19th, we have a very exciting project. We're starting our first history project with Anirudh Kanisetti. It's called Echoes of India. Please do catch it on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcast from. And with that, let's continue on with your show.
All right, welcome back, guys. Carrying on from that crazy story about burritos falling from the sky and the Eye of Sauron in San Francisco last weekend. There's a lot more which has happened. Of course, every few months there's a new technology or a new breakthrough or a new kind of startup or a new massive funding round every other hour, I think, in Silicon Valley. But what's some of the most disruptive real tech beyond like driverless cars? Obviously, we've all been hearing about globally, but what's some really contextual stuff happening around that side? Because you're in the heart of it. What do you think is the most interesting?
Yeah, you know, I think the funniest thing in California is that, you know, legislation has passed where now marijuana is legal in California. And, you know, it's basically like alcohol. You show your ID at the dispensary and they let you in. And then it's kind of like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory or a weed factory. But, you know, ultimately, you know, I laugh at it, but at the same time, it provides, you know, a lot of relief for people who are in pain. And, you know, the technology piece of it, you know, companies like Ease, where it's essentially, you know, Uber for weed, and you put in your, you know, what you want, and they come, and there's a guy who like will ring your doorbell and say, hey, you know, here's your package, have a good day. But the cannabis tech stuff is really interesting in California because, one, I think they're having a very hard time finding executives to kind of jump ship to work at these cannabis companies because people don't know how to feel about that on their LinkedIn. As funny as that sounds, right? You know, but it's true.
It's part of your resume at that point in time.
Exactly. And when you put yourself in that position, you put yourself up for scrutiny. And because it's not legal on the federal level, you know, I think that's essentially the challenge that they're facing. But I think, again, you know, it's a bunch of misfits in Silicon Valley and people who want to take that chance and take that risk. There's a massive market. I think it's a $28 billion market. Wow. And if you look at countries like Canada, who basically fully legalized it, it kind of takes you to that place back when prohibition kind of like, you know, was over, and then the money just started pouring in. So, you know, I think the technology that can come out of there, whether it's, you know, building a back office for a dispensary where they can manage all the payments, or whether it's on demand, or whether it's, you know, some other type of technology, whether it's like a vaporizer pen, you know, because even consumer technologies are something that they are being affected by that, you know, and there's a very large company in the U.S. called Juul. Yeah,
Juul. Yeah, I've seen those.
It's like, man, it's like everyone is vaping. It's like, geez, it's like, you know, the people who used to vape back in the days were like juggalos who liked like Insane Clown Posse and drank like, drank Faygo. But now it's like people are vaping at their desk, and it's like, dude, you're like the CEO, but it's just become so normalized, and it's become so available that now the government has paid attention, because what's the unfortunate byproduct is that kids are now vaping, and they're being introduced to nicotine at a much earlier age. So they actually just passed legislation where it's illegal to now sell it at a liquor store. And you have to actually go to Juul's website. You have to do age verification, and then you have to type in the last four of your social security number. So they're gonna have this database where they can basically verify that information. So, again, it's kind of the byproduct of taking risks, is that they didn't expect that to happen. Yeah, but it did happen, unfortunately. But I think again, if you can kind of play within the box as much as possible, usually you're gonna be in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, the rise of weed tech has actually been really fast, especially, of course, with the legislation changing. But the other stuff, of course, we've all been hearing about, like I said, driverless cars, or things like AI or AR, and there's quite a bit of stuff even happening there. Like, there's like Snapchat. What's happening with Snapchat, by the way?
Well, okay, let's be honest with ourselves. I don't know, probably no one's opened the Snapchat ad in the last 5 or 6 months. And there's a reason. I think, one, you have a CEO who has an ego. And he hasn't empowered his employees to essentially do what's best for his company, because he feels like, this is my company, I'm the visionary. And just that's what happens when you have a CEO who's a designer by trade, a product designer by trade, right? They kind of always are poking holes and really just not letting you do the right type of work. But the one thing that they did do fantastically is that they introduced people to augmented reality.
Yeah.
The very first augmented reality ad that they launched was with Taco Bell, and basically your face became a taco. It's like you're taco-fying yourself, but it was fun, and it was, and it was innovative. And because of that, now you start to see a lot of augmented reality companies coming out of it. One of the companies that I advise is called Hype. And, Hype, they're trying to build the world's largest connected camera ad network. Oh. And so you can imagine a future where you're walking down the street, you probably are going to have the Apple AR glasses. And then you see what seems to be a virtual sandwich board outside of Starbucks that says, if you can see this, you get $5 off your Frappuccino. And there's going to be ads floating around you everywhere. But once you take those glasses off, you're back in the quote-unquote real world.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's not far off.
No. This is a next year thing. This is not that far off. From what I've heard from friends, and they're going to kill me that I'm saying this, but it does look like 2020 is when they're going to launch that product. Wow. So I guess we're breaking some news here. Hopefully they don't come after us.
That's nuts, right? I mean, you guys are... So you're seeing stuff like this. In contrast, I don't know if you've seen the Indian startup tabloids or heard about any hype stuff from here. But obviously we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs here, and we hear about, we stay in the know of what's happening. We've had waves maybe just the past 5 years or so, with a lot of hype and a lot of investment coming into India. But they've been around themes like fintech and food tech. And, of course, we do have our own cab share, ride sharing, and stuff like that, on-demand tech. And this side of the world is obviously going crazy as well, right? In contrast, and since now you are, of course, looking at, you talk to startups all over the world, the growth is definitely here in the numbers. But do you think all the crazy, wacky, futuristic ideas are still in Silicon Valley, and here we're just catching up? Or what's your take on that?
I would say I think Silicon Valley's kind of set up for that. It's set up for companies to go crazy and then fail. And then what the byproduct of that is that those founders will start another company and learn from that, and then, maybe make a company that actually makes a lot of sense. Because if you think about even things like medicine, for example, there's a company called Roman, and the founder of Reddit, Alexis Ohanian, he invested in Roman, and Roman is basically erectile dysfunction pills that come in a subscription box.
Wow.
Okay. Because that's a problem that most males don't want to talk to their doctor about, because it's not masculine to say, hey, I can't perform, and can you help me? And so these conversations are uncomfortable conversations. So when you can subscribe to something, you become a bit anonymized, right? Your face isn't out there when you're pleading for this help. So medicine, I think, is something that works and scales across the globe. So I can see companies like that coming into India or coming into these other markets that are growth markets, and ultimately simply make people's lives better, right? And serve a better purpose. So I think from that perspective, I think it might be even footing, because, medical problems are global, right? It's something that everyone has. And, at the end of the day, there's a model that's being tested and tried out in the Valley that is applicable here. And honestly, if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening to this and you're in India, I would definitely look into this, because I can guarantee you will raise money rather quickly.
Yeah, no, that's not. We obviously take a lot of inspiration from the West, and to be honest, that's sort of been an interesting handicap, I would say.
It's been a problem, hasn't it? I think that the fact
most VCs just
are looking at concept arbitrage, right? I think that's a word that I've read fairly often. But I mean, that seems like a lot of the Indian tech scene. There are exceptions. There are definitely exceptions. People like ShareChat are doing really, really interesting things. So there are definitely exceptions. But a lot of what seems to be happening is concept arbitrage, right? Where you're taking an idea that's working somewhere else in the world and bringing it to India and just Indianizing it in some ways. Rather than stuff that is looking at the Indian context and trying to generate a product out of that. So I think that's something that I think we'll see that change, but I think that that's definitely a problem we have right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look at, one of the more famous companies, Rocket Internet Group, that's essentially what they do, right?
Yeah.
They look at a model and they say, okay, let's take Airbnb, but bring it to Brazil and call it something else, but exactly copy what they're doing. Is that fair? Who's to say it's not fair? If there's an opportunity there, you seize the day, because at the end of the day, let's be real, we're here to make money. And whatever means it is to kind of get you to that point, you're going to try and test it and see if you could be successful. So if it is simply just copying something else that works in another market and kind of localizing it, more power to you, because, tech doesn't always have to be innovative. Sometimes it just needs to exist because it is providing some sort of access. And, access at scale is also very important.
Yeah, and profitable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, and that's been the thing. I mean, I think the initial wave of startups in India definitely, simply because the VC supported that thesis, were doing that. But like Amit said, there's been innovation, and there's more and more innovation recently. What's your take on your understanding of the mobile market in India and the sheer economy of it, and compared to what you've seen in the past 8 years in the US? I mean, you've seen a lot of tech changing and upgrading, and the future's clearly starting there. But in the numbers, since you're a numbers guy here, we have bigger numbers here.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
How do you think the trend line compares to what you've seen in 8 years in Silicon Valley to what kind of direction we are sort of going?
Some of the smaller apps in India are larger than some of the largest apps in the US. But I think when you break it down, you're looking at things, I'm a metrics person, so I'm looking at things like average revenue per daily active user.
Right.
And so when you're looking at a metric like ARPDAU, then, that may be where there isn't a parallel, right? Where you're seeing that while you have a lot of users on your app, they're maybe not spenders and they're pretenders, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're looking at it from that perspective, you really do need very smart and sophisticated tools to help you extract as much value from your user base as possible. And ultimately, that can happen in any region, right? Because, what you really want to do is you want to maximize, what the profit that you could potentially have in your app. So,
right.
So whether it's India, whether it's China, whether it's, BRIC or, the acronym, right? I think at the end of the day, they need software to really take it, because, there's so much data out there that it can kind of drive you in circles, because you just don't know what to do with it. And this data point looks interesting, and so does this one and this other one. And then you need something to kind of put it all together and really surface those insights to make, your job as a marketer a lot easier.
Yeah, and you wanted to ask a question about.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to actually. So you worked both before and after in the ad and marketing space, right? Before data became so central, data was always a part of it, right? But now it's become central to the entire. I think you mentioned this a little earlier. How do you think things have changed from a functional perspective, right? I mean, like as a marketer, what's your day-to-day, what's the day-to-day change been, right? I mean, like, how do you reorient yourself into this?
Well, data used to be so siloed, right? And these silos existed, and you had to go into one silo to get, insights, and then you were then trying to stitch it to some other data, and you're doing that maybe with a data scientist, maybe not. And, I think my take on it is that it's become more sophisticated.
More actionable now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a key word. Actionable is clearly it, because there was one where I understand the data, but I don't know what to do with it. And now it's not only do you understand it, but that's all being done by algorithms. And then now it's like, this is what you should do with it. And then now you're looking at things where there's, predictive, right? When what you're guessing what this user is going to do in the future with pretty high accuracy. And, now that we're getting to this point, these algorithms, the data is like the oil, and it just kind of keeps them running. The more types of data that they're seeing, the more accurate they're perceived to be. So, I think that change where, I used to buy TV and I used to buy radio in like really small markets like Brownsville, Texas. And, one of the campaigns that I worked on was the 2010 U.S. Census. And, I'm not going to, give myself too much props. So we did win Adweek Media Campaign of the Year for that.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm super, a little feather in my hat from that. Was probably like the thing that I gave to that was probably my biggest accomplishment on Madison Avenue.
Traditional media.
Yeah, in traditional media. But, I can recall a day when I would work with a website and get the data from them. And I was like, these numbers don't seem real, but whatever. Because my client didn't have a way to verify that. And so, at the end of the day, it was kind of like this trust. It was like,
it was a hunch.
Yeah, it was really much a hunch. And, the cool things that we did back then were like, let's do a landing page with a vanity URL. Like that was like, oh my God, wow. And then the client's like, this is so cool. And it's like, now it's like, that's like boring. Yeah, literally. It literally is. It's come a long way. I think what you can do now as a marketer is it's insane. I think there's so many opportunities for you to kind of reach your audience, whether it's even things like IoT, whether, it's on the mobile device or it's over the top television, whatever it is, I think there's an opportunity for you to kind of reach that user. And, and that's kind of what data is allowed. It's allowed for marketers to take more of a risk and take more chances.
In fact, I mean, there's a flip side to it. Maybe that the hunch you had, if it paid off, yes, you were rewarded. If it didn't, you say, well, I didn't have enough data.
Yeah, exactly.
That's no longer an excuse, I guess.
Now that's no longer an excuse.
Yeah, now I have too much data.
I have too much data.
I couldn't sift through it efficiently.
Yeah, I'm paralyzed. There's too much information.
Yeah, that's why you need the right tools, which, well, we'll talk about. But so what's your take? I mean, closing notes, what's your take on the way forward? Obviously for digital marketing or for the this whole space. Like you said, what the guys at Hype are doing is essentially making your reality just like your phone screen, right? So it's like push notifications in my face.
Literally. Well, I don't, I think my take is also there's this other piece. There's GDPR, right? There's a lot of governance that needs to be done by companies, and it's not about do I get your permission to capture your information. Now it's like, do I get your permission to capture this information because I'm going to do this thing? Right now, they're not telling you what they're doing with it, and that's the problem. It's like, well, what's the thing? So now that if they become more transparent, I think they can start to earn that trust back, and people are going to start to opt in and say, you know what? I'm willing to do it because now I know what you're doing with it. And I think that kind of secrecy and that veil, it's just the world is too modern, the world is too transparent for it not to be like that.
Right. No, and that's only going to get more and more. I mean, users are smart now, or rather we're all like seriously overloaded with marketing.
Yeah, we are, definitely.
But awesome, man. Thanks so much for doing this, Armando. You want to...
As always, please subscribe to the Slack channel. That's on ivmpodcast.com/Shunya1. If you go over there and click the button, join the Slack channel, we'll send you an invitation to join it. And also, please do make sure you give us a rating or review on iTunes or Castbox or wherever you're listening to the show. It really does help us.
You want to do a shout out to anyone and maybe even tell people how to get in touch with you on Twitter?
Yeah. So shout out to anyone. Well, I think... there's a lot of people that I can shout out. But I think one person that I could definitely shout out is Sochi and Michael Birch. They're the founders of Bebo, a company that was acquired by AOL for $800 million. They're one of my they're both of my mentors. They're a fantastic couple. They have a really great club in San Francisco called The Battery. It's a social club, and they put a lot of just different people together. Kind of like, think about like a London old school social club.
Oh.
That's what it is. And, they've been so great to me. You want to follow me on Instagram, AO619, Twitter, AO619. I'm just look up AO619 and you can pretty much find me anywhere.
All right. Thanks so much, Armando, and hope to see you back in India sometime soon.
I definitely am looking forward to my next trip. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. Thanks, guys. Talk to you guys next week.
Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta. I'm B50 on Twitter. I am the host of Paisa Vaisa, the show that talks money. On my show, I speak to experts from every field of money and finance, from stock markets, equities, debt funds, credit cards, life insurance, every possible area of money and finance that you can think of. We even did an episode on cryptocurrency. I've got fantastic guests from mutual funds to personal finance experts everywhere. Robo-advisory, startups, just name it, we've got it. At Paisa Vaisa, we help you make smart decisions about money. You work hard for money. Now make your money work hard for you. New episodes out every Monday, and you can listen to my show on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcasting app that you have.
Give me a word. या कोई भी लाइन. कुछ भी हो सकता है यार. क्या कहा आपने? टोपी. Okay. Mohan Joshi hated wearing topis. He felt suffocated in them. टोपी पहनते ही उसे स्कूल की याद आती थी. Where of course he had no choice but to wear a टोपी. But जिस दिन पास आउट हुआ, उसी दिन उसने अपने टोपी का bonfire बना दिया. And since then, he'd never worn a cap or a hat. ना कड़कती धूप में, and not even to बचो from the ठंडी. But from Monday 26th February, Mohan Joshi had to wear a topi all the time. Why? Because if he didn't, everyone around him knew exactly what kya soch raha tha. They knew that he was wondering how the girl in the yellow churidar would look bina kapde ke. They knew when he was calling the boss a sadela tomato. They knew everything. पर ये सब हुआ कैसे? अरे भाई, यही तो स्टोरी है. और ये स्टोरी आप ही ने मुझे दिया by giving me the starting word. यही तो है The Croc's Tales. Words आपके, कहानी आपके लिए. Catch the stories on Monday and Thursday on the IVM website, app, and anywhere you get your podcast from. See you soon.